Hip dips and getting rid of hip dips. You'll find tons of articles on Google and comments on social media, all giving you advice on what exercises and what diets are needed to get rid of hip dips. But the truth is, the hip dips condition is caused by variations in skeletal structure, and we can't change that. We can improve it though, but it takes non-invasive body contouring treatments, not exercise, not diets. So if you have clients distressed over their hip dips, because they do present a barrier to the hourglass look, stay tuned to this episode. It's all about hip dips and how you can help your clients reduce them.
You're listening to the Body Contouring Academy's Proven Profits podcast, where you'll learn simple, actionable strategies from real-world, successful body contouring professionals to help you generate more revenue, realize the profits you want, and create the life you desire. Hi, I'm Shannon.
And I'm Kay.
And we're your hosts of the Proven Profits podcast.
Hello there, fellow body contouring professionals. Kay here. Thank you for being here too. You know, it seems like everyone is obsessed with having a perfectly shaped butt with a tiny waist. You know, the hourglass figure. Well, that's why hip dips with those inward curves at the hips, it do make the butt look more square and completely obliterate any chance of rounded hourglass hips. It causes so much heartbreak. Now, there's nothing pathological about hip dips. Nothing wrong at all. Hip dips are simply a normal variation of skeletal structure. But that hip indentation nips the hourglass figure in the bud. And the good news, though, is that body contouring professionals can reduce hip dips. And we're going to tell you how today. We'll be discussing what hip dips look like, what causes hip dips, how to help your clients reduce them, and we'll go into a little bit about the hip dip reduction protocol, which you'll learn in our Booty and Body Sculpting Masterclass, our new online body contouring certification course, in which you learn not only the hip dip reduction protocol, but the rump plumper, butt sculpt, and waist shaper too. So let's dive in and start off with, what do hip dips look like? In case you don't know, hip dips are indentions on the outside part of the hip, located between that pelvic bone and the trochanter. Now remember, the trochanter is the bony knob at the top of the femur. The dip in the hips is noticeable from both the front and the back. And the condition's been given a nickname, violin hips, if that helps give you a visual image. It's due to the actual anatomical structure of the pelvic, hip, and thigh bones. In other words, your client's skeletal anatomy. And for some clients, they may also have a condition in which the skin on the outside of the hip is attached to the trochanter really tightly, which exaggerates the indentation. We'll tell you what hip dips are not. They're not a problem with fat. Oftentimes, the less fat around the area, the more pronounced the hip dip condition. And it's also not a problem with the size of the hips. It's simply the skeletal anatomy that causes hip dips. So specifically, let's look at the bony structures that are in play with hip dips. So the ilium makes up the upper part of your hip bone and pelvis, and it's the largest bone in your hip. So stand up, or if you're sitting, check it on your body, reach back to your flank area, press in, and you can feel your ilium when you press, and you can feel that it goes all the way across your flank area. The next one is the hip joint. And the hip joint's where the femur, that thigh bone, joins the ilium. Remember, we were just talking about that. Now, the hip joint's a ball and socket joint. The ball is the femur head, your thigh bone head, and the socket is the part of the pelvis that's known as the acetabulum. Now, I'm not going to tell you to stand up to check your hip joint because you can't. It's deep inside your body, so you can't see it or feel it. But here's one that you can, the trochanter, which is also known as the greater trochanter. We've talked about it a couple times already. It's that bony knob at the top of your femur bone. So stand up for this one and check your body. Touch the side of your hips, and you should be able to run it up and down. You should be able to feel a little bony prominence or knob at your hips, unless you have wonderful hourglass hips and it's nice and padded and you can't. So what anatomical designs of the ilium, the hip joint, and the trochanter in that pelvis, hips, and thigh area actually lead to and create the condition of hip dips? Well, one thing is if your client just simply has a large trochanter, that can create a dip in the hips. A second one is if there is a short distance between that ilium and the trochanter, that can also create a dip in the hips. And finally, a long distance between the ilium and the hip socket can actually lead to the appearance of hip dips too. So it's important to note that all of these are normal variations of skeletal anatomy, and you do not have to determine which one of these is actually causing it. You can recognize it by seeing the indentation. But remember, the skeleton's one thing we can't change. So if we can't change the skeleton, what can we do to help clients reduce hip dips? Well, one thing is if your client builds and strengthens the muscle groups around the hips and buttocks, it can help to minimize the appearance of hip dips. Now, it's important to know this is not a treatment in and of itself, and it won't reduce hip dips on its own, but it's a good augmentation to our non-invasive body contouring treatments. In other words, it's good for your client to be doing also in conjunction with your treatments. In other words, you want your client to grow her glutes, to increase the muscle mass in the 3 primary gluteus muscles. Remember, those are the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and the gluteus minimus. They're the 3 primary muscles. Of the 3, it's the gluteus medius that's positioned in the area of the hip dips, but all 3 muscles need to be worked. Now, if you want to know what exercises your client can do, because you want to do everything you can to educate and help your client, you can find a list of 8 great exercises that will reduce the appearance of hip dips in our blog, How to Help Clients Reduce Hip Dips, and we'll leave a link for you to that blog in our show notes if you're interested in taking a look at that. But speaking of exercising to build and shape the glutes, what's the best way to supercharge a workout to muscles to build and tone in a short amount of time? Electromagnetic muscle stimulation, or EMS treatments, because they do increase muscle mass. So if you could offer and perform EMS treatments targeting those gluteal muscles, it's a great alternative for the client who has a busy lifestyle or is resistant to working out. You know, the kind of excuses, I don't have time, or, etc. Because remember, EMS is safe, effective, and affordable, and it's easy to add if you're doing your hip reduction treatments. If you don't offer EMS treatments but you think you might want to, consider taking advantage of our EMS course and get started. We'll leave a link to the details of our electromagnetic muscle stimulation course in our show notes too for you. But how about a little pro tip? In the back of your mind, or even the front of your mind, were you thinking of advising the client to lose weight to help with hip dips? Well, losing weight or losing fat in the hip dips area probably won't help. Remember, hip dips are not an excess fat problem. They're a skeletal problem. And losing fat in the area just may make it look worse. So, back to what does help besides working the glutes. You should also consider recommending treatments to the buttock area and not just to the hips. Remember, your client's wanting to round out her somewhat square-shaped buttocks that are caused by the hip dips. So the perfect treatment or treatments, the butt sculpt, non-surgical Brazilian butt lift, or the rump plumper, treatments for more rounded buttocks to the hip region. These treatments both target the buttocks and will help create that more rounded buttocks to hip region, giving your client that hourglass look that she is desiring. And you'll find both of these advanced protocols in our Booty and Body Sculpting Masterclass course too. But now to the non-invasive body contouring treatment for hip dips, the hip dip reduction protocol. This protocol utilizes our proprietary advanced techniques to specifically target and reduce the dips in the hips. This is how it works, the mechanism of action of the hip dip reduction protocol. You're going to help clients reduce hip dips the following ways. You're going to increase circulation and tissue mass to the hips so you fill in the dip in the hip. You're going to work the gluteus muscles to build mass that's going to help fill in the dip in the hip. You're going to loosen the skin that might be tightly attached to that trochanter to minimize the dip in the hip indentation. And you're going to stimulate collagen and elastin to plump up the appearance over there to fill in and make it a plumper appearance at that dip in the hip. Now, what are these treatments, these hip reduction treatments known as non-surgical hip rounding? Well, they're non-invasive alternatives to a surgical fat transfer hip dip correction. Because we don't know if you knew, but there is an actual surgical procedure that corrects the hip dip condition. But the non-surgical, the non-invasive alternative, the hip dip reduction protocol, utilizes vacuum therapy, vacuum massage, and vacuum cupping. But knowledge of advanced techniques is needed. So remember, not only is this protocol ideal for clients to minimize that dip in the hip, so they can achieve that hourglass figure they're looking for, it's also great for clients desiring to just make their hips rounder, enhancing the existing roundness or increasing the size of the hips. So if you haven't heard us talk about our Booty and Body Sculpting Masterclass yet, it's an online body contouring certification course providing you with advanced non-invasive body contouring education and teaching you advanced non-invasive body contouring techniques like the hip dip reduction protocol. It's going to reduce the hip dips and give your clients the hourglass body they deserve. You'll learn how to perform advanced techniques with vacuum therapy and vacuum cupping technology. And it not only shows you how to reduce the hip dips, but you're also going to learn how to lift, plump, and enhance the buttocks and the hips using these advanced techniques. Plus, you'll learn how to shape the waist and torso to restore and enhance or create that tiny waist that's needed for the hourglass figure. So it's 4 protocols: hip dip reduction, butt sculpt, rump plumper, waist shaper. And you get your certification immediately upon completion, like in all of our courses. We're leaving a link to that course details so you can check it out if you're interested. You know, your clients have been scouring the internet and social media sites trying to find a solution for their hip dips. I mean, the evidence is clear. When you make the announcements to your clients that you can help them, they will be so happy. We hope that today you've learned about some things that you didn't know before and that you're excited to put them into action, to incorporate them in your body contouring business and practice. We love sharing the knowledge we've gained through the years of our experience with the next generation of body contouring professionals. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, beautiful wishes.
If you enjoyed the show, please find us on iTunes and leave us a review. Email us at bodycontouringacademy.com with any feedback, topic suggestions, or to offer to tell your body contouring success story. We love to hear success stories and learn about winning strategies. Visit bodycontouringacademy.com for tools, education, industry news, and cutting-edge articles. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.